These are all the bits taken out which is needed for the service and hopefully to get this car running right. The easiest thing to do in this situation now is just to call Bugatti, order the parts come and we can fit them. But we know Bugatti are not going to sell us the parts unless the car is at their place.
A repossession company called Matt Armstrong and offered him a Bugatti Veyron at a price well below market value. The car looked perfect from the outside, barely touched interior, and the W16 engine fired up on the very first attempt. Then, it refused to move. What followed was an incredible teardown that nobody expected in automotive history, exposing something hidden inside one of the most expensive and exclusive hypercars ever built. Matt traced part numbers, cross-referenced components, and found pieces that nobody at Bugatti headquarters ever wanted known. And the secrets hiding inside a $2 million machine started coming to the surface, one component at a time. What exactly did Matt Armstrong discover during his ordeal? Join us as we delve into the details. The price gap. Some cars arrive with a reputation already built before the engine even turns over, and the Bugatti Veyron is one of them. Volkswagen Group pushed it into production in 2005 at its facility in Molsheim, France, and engineers at the time considered it the most complicated road car ever built. At the heart of the machine sat a quad-turbocharged W16 engine, a configuration built by fusing two V8 engines together into a single monstrous power plant, capable of numbers nothing else on the road could match. The W16 layout wasn't a simple trick of bolting two engines side by side. It wasn't two straight 8s pushed together, and it wasn't two V8s lined up nose to tail either. Bugatti engineers built something far more intricate, a 16-cylinder unit fed by 4 turbochargers, sending power through all 4 wheels at once. Output crossed the 1,000 horsepower mark, a figure that felt almost impossible for a production road car when the Veyron first launched onto dealership floors. Top speed eventually reached 253 miles per hour, a record that stood when the Supersport version arrived in 2010. Bugatti built only 450 examples of the Veyron across its entire production run, ending with a final car named La Finale that rolled off the assembly line in 2015. Each one represented years of engineering work compressed into a single vehicle, and owning one meant joining one of the smallest, most exclusive ownership clubs in the automotive world. Cars like this rarely change hands through ordinary channels. So when a repossession company contacted YouTuber Matt Armstrong about a Veyron sitting in their inventory, he understood the situation instantly. This was a rare chance to own one of the most significant hypercars ever built, and it was also almost certainly going to become a massive headache. He bought the car anyway, paying a price well below typical market value, likely somewhere in 6 figures rather than the 7 figures these cars usually command. Matt inherited more than just a set of keys when the deal closed. The exterior looked mint, barely touched by time or weather, and the interior showed almost no wear at all, as though someone had kept it wrapped in cotton wool for years. The engine itself fired on the very first turn of the key, sending a deep, layered growl through the workshop that stopped everyone nearby in their tracks. For a moment, everything about the car looked perfect. Then the car simply refused to move. It sat there, engine running, completely unwilling to engage any gear at all. This was the first sign of trouble buried inside a vehicle that looked flawless on the outside. In the world of supercar ownership, a locked gearbox triggers a very specific and very expensive sequence of events, starting with a call to an authorized dealership and ending with a quote that few owners are financially prepared to hear. That quote landed somewhere between $350,000 and $400,000 just to address a gearbox that wouldn't shift. Most owners faced with a number like that would walk away immediately, deciding the car wasn't worth saving, selling it for parts, or shipping it straight to a dealer and letting the problem become someone else's responsibility. Matt Armstrong took a different path entirely, choosing to open the car up himself and trace the fault from the very beginning, one wire at a time. He worked through the electrical system carefully, following each connection like a detective working through evidence at a crime scene. Hours of diagnostic work later, he found the actual source of the problem, a single blown fuse hidden deep in the wiring. This tiny component, responsible for shutting down the entire gearbox system, cost roughly $3 and came from Halfords, a chain better known across the United Kingdom for windscreen wipers and car batteries than hypercar repairs. For people unfamiliar with the brand, Halfords functions as something close to a general automotive retailer, the kind of shop almost nobody associates with Bugatti ownership. Matt held the tiny plastic fuse up to the camera, pointing out that Bugatti's official network had quoted nearly £300,000 for a brand new gearbox, when the actual fault traced back to a part worth less than a cup of coffee. The gap between those two numbers said everything about how the system operates. This wasn't simply a lucky fix or a stroke of good fortune. It exposed something far bigger about how official service networks diagnose, or fail to diagnose, expensive problems on cars like this. A $350,000 estimate had been built entirely around the assumption that the gearbox itself was broken, when in fact, one small electrical component had cut power to the whole system. Nobody on the dealership side had bothered to check the simplest possible explanation first. Bugatti's reputation rests heavily on the idea that every part of the ownership experience reflects extraordinary engineering and complete exclusivity, justifying price tags that sit far beyond anything else on the road. A diagnostic failure of this size raises real doubts about how much of that reputation is earned through genuine technical mastery, and how much comes from owners simply trusting the badge without ever being given the chance to question what they're actually paying for. A blown fuse worth $3 had just exposed a gap worth hundreds of thousands, but that turned out to be only the smallest problem hiding inside this car. Deeper faults were still waiting in the wiring, the cooling system, and the gearbox electronics, faults that Bugatti's own network refused to help fix at any price. What was actually still broken underneath all that mint-condition bodywork? The locksmith key. Fixing one blown fuse was the easy part. Underneath, Matt's Veyron was hiding more problems that crept in slowly. An engine misfire kept appearing on the left bank, sometimes at cylinder 16, sometimes spreading further, never settling in one spot. Coolant leaked steadily from the front radiator, pooling on the workshop floor. A fault in the fuse box added another layer. And once the car was running again, more electrical gremlins surfaced. Warning lights flickered without warning, as if the car was resisting every repair. Matt did the obvious thing and asked Bugatti directly for basic parts: filters, seals, fluids, standard components any workshop needs. Bugatti said no. Their policy was specific. Parts would only go to technicians in their authorized network, and the car itself would need to be shipped to their facility for any official work. This effectively blocks any independent mechanic or owner from servicing a Bugatti outside the manufacturer's walls. No buying parts directly, no independent work, no trusted outside specialist. The only path is handing the car over and accepting whatever bill comes back. Matt called Bugatti's customer service slower than the car itself. Faced with that wall, Matt decided that if Bugatti wouldn't supply the parts, he'd make them another way. That decision defined the rest of the project. One challenge stands out before the biggest discovery. The Veyron's top speed mode needs a secondary speed key that lowers ride height, adjusts aerodynamics, and unlocks the full 253 mph top speed. Without it, the car won't approach its maximum. An official replacement from Bugatti costs a fortune. Rather than pay it, Matt studied the mechanism himself and found it was a fairly conventional mechanical design, closer to something a locksmith could reproduce than proprietary Bugatti tech. So he worked with an automotive locksmith and had a custom speed key built from scratch. Reverse engineering hardware most owners assume only the manufacturer can provide. Even after that, The car kept fighting back. A blown fuse knocked out the indicators. The misfire kept triggering warning lights. A tire pressure fault threatened to block top speed mode entirely, even after everything else was cleared for the planned high-speed run. Then, more than 150 miles into the drive toward a private runway booked for testing, the car lost power and shut down. The team suspected the fuel pump control module and scrambled to diagnose it on site, with no help from Bugatti's network. At every stage, the Veyron fought back, and at every stage, Matt found a way through. None of it, not the fuse, not the key, not the misfire, prepared anyone for what Matt found when he dug into the real cost of Bugatti ownership. An answer that showed how much of the price tag was genuine engineering and how much was just paying for the badge. What did Matt Armstrong actually find when he finally got the real numbers? The parts. Bin secret. A standard annual service was all Matt Armstrong actually needed. Nothing close to a rebuild, just oil, filters, spark plugs, and fluids. A regular car costs a few £100 for this at a local garage. Bugatti's official network quoted Matt $25,000 to $27,000 for the same category of work. That number is worth sitting with. What Matt actually spent tells a different story, one that shows how little of that quote was about real parts or labor cost. When Bugatti wouldn't sell him components directly, he started pulling part numbers and tracing them back to their real manufacturers. The accumulator tanks in the gearbox turned out to be identical to units in the Volkswagen Lupo, a hatchback that once sold for under £10,000. Bugatti charged $617 per tank, $1,235 for the pair. The VW equivalent ran about £200 total. The 16 spark plugs were standard NGK units. Sourced directly, each cost £17.4. Bugatti charged $57 each, $916 for the full set versus roughly £278 direct from NGK. The ignition coils matched parts from the Volkswagen Phaeton and Bentley Continental GT. Bugatti priced them at $245 each, $3,923 for the set, plus almost 24 hours of build labor, another $6,700 just to install them. Half a liter of Haldex fluid cost $191 through Bugatti versus about £29 from a standard supplier. The gearbox pump traced to an Audi A6 all-road part, around £1,121 through Audi, versus Bugatti's $3,615 for the same component under a different badge. Matt went further, sourcing just the pump motor for €268, buying two as a spare, swapping the wiring himself, and getting the gearbox pump running without Bugatti's network at all. His final bill came to about £1,194, roughly $1,600, against a Bugatti quote many times higher. That's savings of over 93% just by refusing to treat Bugatti parts as a separate category from ordinary automotive parts. The oil service needed 14 liters of 10W60, the same grade used in BMW and Aston Martin performance engines, rated for sustained temperatures between 250 and 300 degrees. It had to pass through 16 separate sump plugs on the W16 block, each removed, fitted with a fresh washer, and torqued by hand. The oil filter came through independent specialist Simon Furlonger, priced well below the factory network. Not everything went smoothly. The mass airflow sensors caused real headaches. Matt ordered the same part number twice and got two different physical units. He fixed it by transplanting the sensor elements into the original housings himself, a workaround that took real skill. That kind of resourcefulness is exactly what Bugatti's authorized service structure seems designed to prevent. A system routing every repair and part order through one controlled channel, leaving little room for owners to solve problems on their own. What happened next when Bugatti finally had to respond to everything Matt had uncovered about their own parts pricing, turned out to be the most telling part of this entire story. The system exposed Mark McCann's experience buying his own Veyron mirrors. Matt Armstrong's almost exactly. McCann paid £900,000 for a broken Veyron, intending a full restoration, only to hit the same parts walls, the same corporate silence, and the same manufactured mystique Bugatti builds around ownership. Two separate people, working independently, hit identical barriers in the same order. That consistency isn't coincidence. When two independent restorers on two different cars hit identical resistance from the same manufacturer, the pattern stops being a customer service issue and starts revealing structure. This was intentional architecture, built to route every pound spent on Bugatti ownership back through the official network rather than independent workshops or resourceful owners. Parts revenue, service income, and diagnostic fees all stay in one controlled channel, and the wall goes up fast for anyone trying around it. What sets Matt's project apart is how thoroughly he documented it on camera. Part numbers photographed, receipts with exact figures, cost comparisons anyone can verify against Bugatti's official pricing. It's a full, verifiable record of how the system works, laid out in plain view. A dealership service manager facing a customer who's watched this project now has a harder conversation than a few years ago. That customer already knows what the accumulator tanks cost from Volkswagen, what NGK charges for spark plugs, what the gearbox pump traces to in Audi's catalog. Bugatti's pricing depended on owners never looking closely at what was inside the car. That assumption has now been tested publicly and proven wrong. On camera, with a multimeter. The W16 engine itself deserves real credit, regardless of the pricing conclusions. It pairs two narrow-angle V8 engines on a shared crankshaft for 16 cylinders total, fed by 4 turbochargers in 2 stages, 2 low pressure, 2 high pressure, running sequentially to kill turbo lag. Standard Veyrons made 1,001 horsepower. The Super Sport pushed to 1,200. Fitting all of that into a drivable car creates engineering density that makes even routine repairs genuinely hard, even for technicians with full factory access. The cylinder 16 misfire that dogged Matt's rebuild shows this well. Instead of crankshaft position data, the Veyron uses ion sensing to read combustion events inside each cylinder directly, feeding that to the ECU, each module costing around $9,000, times 16 cylinders. Matt isolated the fault by swapping coil packs and plugs between banks, tracking whether it moved with the parts or stayed put. It confirmed the coils and plugs as culprits rather than the ion sensors or combustion chamber, with carbon buildup and sensor drift from long storage as likely factors. Swapping components across banks cleared most of the misfire, though uneven cold starts suggested something deeper might still be lurking. Even so, Matt had worked through diagnostic complexity that would overwhelm most pros with full factory backing. All this points toward the same question for every manufacturer operating at this level of the market. Crossing the finish lines. Unexpected power loss hit around 150 miles into the drive, along with fresh warning lights across the dashboard. The engine shut down without warning, sending the team scrambling again. Diagnostics pointed to a possible fault in the fuel pump control module, the system managing fuel pressure across the engine. The pumps worked fine, but the module regulating pressure seemed to be failing intermittently, with nothing conclusive from initial testing. It was another setback in a rebuild defined by obstacles since day one. After the gearbox fault, the blown fuse, a full service under 1,200 pounds, a custom speed key built from scratch, and 150 trouble-free miles, most people would have hit their breaking point. Matt Armstrong refused to quit. He and his team ran fresh diagnostics, and worked systematically through the fuel system, checking modules and tracing wiring. This is what happens when a $3 fuse has already solved what a dealer quoted thousands for. Once you've shown the world that accumulator tanks in a $2 million hypercar match parts from an ordinary city car, one more breakdown isn't a reason to stop. There's a real question worth asking after this story. One bigger than one car or one stubborn YouTuber in a UK workshop? If one determined person with a workshop and a camera can uncover all this and keep the car running, it raises real questions about supercar pricing industry-wide. If a full annual service on a Bugatti Veyron genuinely costs around £1,193 in real OEM parts, the official quote stops looking like a fair premium. $15,000 of that gap is pure service and labor markup for what was basically an oil change. $1,000 alone reportedly just gets a technician to look at the airbag system, no repair included. To be fair, Bugatti's position isn't baseless. There's a real safety argument in the pricing. A Veyron is built to run safely at 253 miles per hour, where component failure means far more than cost or inconvenience. The tolerances in its suspension, aerodynamics, tire monitoring, and top speed mode sit at the outer edge of what's mechanically possible. So what happens when one of those tolerances gets pushed too far at full speed? If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.